Welcome to the JLC podcast, presented by the Jorgensen Learning Center. Change the conversation, change the results. Here's Dr. Ray Jorgensen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for returning to the JLC chat room and the In-Learning series. We are continuing a conversation with Terry Moulton and Joe Marshall about effective meetings. And this section is going to be pretty short. And the reason why it's short is we have agreed with one another that sometimes too much is just too much. So we're going to give you a simple methodology for thinking about your next meeting. We'll develop a common understanding about something called C4STEAR. I think you'll enjoy it. And at the end, if you choose to, each of you can practice C4STEAR moving forward. So with that said, I'm going to pivot to Joe Marshall and let him set us up. And so he explains to us what C4STEAR is. And I'm going to have Terry weigh in on that, and I will weigh in with Terry. So Joe, you got the driving reins right now.
Okay, so when we conduct meetings, we've tried to help you with a little bit of a memory aid here. So I think if you're chairing a meeting, leading a meeting, it's helpful to think of yourself as essentially needing to guide that meeting through a type of nautical storm, if you will. So the acronym we have, C4STEAR, stands for four things that start with C, and the word steer, S-T-E-A-R, and all of which I'll define going forward here. So our last session, we talked about the importance of meeting planning and building a context, a purpose, and an outcome for the meeting. So that's the first C, is to construct the CPO, and that when you sit down in the chair to start the meeting, review the CPO. The second C is a check-in. Studies show that the first 10 minutes of every meeting, people spend unfocused and thinking about other things. So if you'd like to buy 10 more minutes of productive time in your meeting, then you perform a check-in. A check-in is simply a question that you choose. If it's a small group, you're seeking short answers from the people around you or around the table. If it's a larger group, then you can still use the check-in, the short question format, but you can focus it in a different way by calling perhaps on a couple of individuals to get the attention focused on your subject and in the room. And so frequently people spend a lot of time thinking about, well, what are good check-in questions? So I'll give you a couple of examples. How's morale, high or low? That's all I want, is high or low as we go around the table. Are we doing enough to train corpsmen at this command? Yes or no? Go around the table. Okay, maybe your favorite football team won a game over the weekend. So, how about those Cowboys? And go around the table, okay? Again, it is less important asking the right question as it is for you, the leader, to realize that what you are doing is pulling attention into the room and getting the voices in the room so that everyone feels like they are working together as a group. Check-in, very important. As you proceed to go through the meeting, you will need frequently to do something that is called close the loop, which is to ensure that what you are communicating was indeed received as it was intended. So some of us will frequently ask the question, what did you hear me say? Or how does that land on you? And the reason for that is because words are imprecise. We have thoughts. The thoughts get coded into words. And frankly, in each of us, that's a process that has a lot of variation in it. So I may have a thought, but choose words that to you mean something completely different. And so the opportunity for miscommunication is pretty high. And so if you are just doing all the talking in a meeting and you are not stopping to close the loop, what did you hear me say? How does this land on you? Then you are really riding roughshod over people and not giving them the opportunity to come back to you with what they are thinking. during the course of the meeting, there are, so now we'll talk about STEAR, and then we'll have one C at the end. In the course of the meeting, there are several things that you need to do to keep the group engaged and moving on the meeting. And so STEAR, the first one, the first S stands for simplify the meeting. So, simplify the agenda. So to the extent that your agenda is complicated, is involved, takes up a lot of space on the paper, your subject is going to be too complex for your group to comprehend it fully, to have an opportunity to think about it and discuss it, and to give you legitimate reactions to what the discussion may be. If you overload the agenda, then you're moving people from thinking into judgment, and so you will get responses, but it will not be the kind of thoughtful responses that you can work with. So the T in STEAR, it refers to timed conversations. When, as a leader, you go through a meeting and you sense that people are confused, are not sure what something means, or there's lots of opinion in the room about what something could mean or how difficult it could be. And again, you all know what that means, because when that occurs, the conversation tends to break down and everybody starts talking to each other at the table. When you have that kind of occurrence, frankly, that's a great opportunity for a timed conversation, for you as the leader to say, I sense that there's a need to have some discussion about what I just said. So for the next 2 minutes, turn to your neighbor and have a conversation on whatever the subject is. This is a very easy and proven tactic, feel free to Google it, that allows people to first of all, go into a very safe space because they're talking peer-to-peer, because it's an opportunity for them to go, what do you think he means? I don't know. What do you think she means? And to compare notes and to reflect upon what has been said. And then at the end of that timed period, you as the leader can call on all of the groups or individual groups, selected individual groups, to come back and report out what they saw as major issues or concerns. That's very effective. So the E in STEAR refers to engagement. Again, for you as the leader, you want the voices in the room. You need people to be engaged. If you see folks who are not talking, if you see folks who are being quiet, you need to explore that and pull them into the room, pull them into the conversation so that they have an opportunity. Do not underestimate what the rest of the group will think about that. They will observe that you noticed that someone was not engaged, that someone was not contributing, and that you as the leader reached out to see, what is your perspective? What are you thinking? Please contribute. This goes a long way toward trust and teamwork. Acknowledge respectfully. So when someone speaks, if you call one out, then asking someone or to speak is sometimes risky for people, but then acknowledging the fact that they spoke and giving them feedback to say, what I heard you say is X or Y. And sometimes if it's, again, you as the leader have the ability to abbreviate that to keep the conversation moving. But again, the idea that you acknowledge and the R, respond respectfully. Again, this goes a very long way in your group to saying, I trust you, I want to hear you, all of the pieces of this conversation are valuable, please contribute. Now, the final C in C4 typically occurs at the end of the meeting, and this is checkout. Okay, and checkout has embedded in it the action items that were agreed upon in the meeting or that were discussed in the meeting. So frequently, this is a weak point in our meetings I would say in DOD, in Navy, and in Navy medicine. So you do not want to skip the action items or the checkout. And a way to get to the action items is to have a member of your team, perhaps the executive assistant or someone else that you designate, write down the action items as they occur in the meeting, and then stand up at the end of the meeting and say, these are the action items and who's going to do what. And if deadlines aren't clear, then you as the leader can assign those deadlines, and allow people to acknowledge that, all right, today what I have learned is X and Y, and I understand that going forward we're going to do some things differently, and we have to do work on those things. But the process for achieving progress is as discussed, and then you have a common picture about what is going to occur going forward. So Ray, that would be my quick summary of C4STEAR.
Check-in, close the loop, simplify, time conversations, engage, acknowledge, respond respectfully, and then check out at the end. And I love that we started with the focusing CPO, intention. So Terry, I'd love you to talk about what you heard Joe say, and I like that that gives people listening a pretty simple way to think about what they could do. It's really not, this is not hard, or if you find it hard, it's hard until it isn't. You know, it's a kind of a standard JLC statement. Things are hard when they're new until they aren't anymore. So Terry, talk to us about this. How did that stuff resonate with you?
Yeah, I reflect back on my experience with CPO and C4STEAR or C4STEAR, and it took me a while to really grasp it. And I like the idea of the acronym, right? CPO. When I was in the setting of the leading a meeting, we would talk about CPO. We would often try to just glance over it, and we did not concentrate on it. But I think for commands out there, here's a great opportunity for you to really get the meeting focused the way it ought to be focusing, right? The CPO. What is the outcome you want? Let's move away from just having a meeting and passing information. Let's get to the outcome we're expecting for that.
I like
and then the steer. The steer is a critical as we practice new meeting management, right? Simplify the agenda. That helps to get a better outcome. I think the time conversations, the technique that we have practiced within Navy medicine of, hey, 2 minutes, grab a partner, team of 2, team of 3. What did you hear? Clarify what that is, and then come back to the leader of the organization and share that with the group. It really gleans a stronger understanding of what the meeting was about. The engagement, you as the leader, you have to have your eyes and ears open. Who's engaged in the meeting and who's not? And if you see someone that's not engaged or they're checking their phone or doodling, ask them to come into the meeting and participate and offer opportunities there. And then the checkout. Often we will gather up taskers or action items from the meeting, but we take the notes, and it may not be so clear. So in the checkout, the opportunity to clarify what the tasks are, the timeliness of them, and who has responsibility really will make for a very valuable meeting. And then when you have your next meeting, you start there. And then that allows for the command to move forward.
Talk a little bit about starting there, starting with the checkout, starting with the...
Yeah, so when you finish your meeting, you're going to check out. You're going to summarize the taskers, who's got it, and what the expectation, the deadlines, and when it's coming back. So when you have your next meeting, you're beginning that meeting with the ending of the last meeting. And you're going to say, we all agreed, we had committed actions to go do A, B, and C. And DFA or DMS, you had those actions. Please not update the group. What is the outcome that we've been able to achieve from that last meeting? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about.
Jerry, that's really powerful, because when you know this, all three of us have seen it. Many meetings just live in isolation. As soon as it's over, and we don't think about the connectivity between that meeting and the next time we gather. Going from checkout to check-in at the next meeting with committed actions is an extremely powerful method moving forward. Well done, both of you, gentlemen. Joe, what are you thinking? Something to add on C4STEAR that you would you didn't say or thought of while Terry was speaking?
Yes, I would just add, I think much of what we've talked about happens within the sort of the construct of the guidelines, the conversation guidelines for having effective communications. So as Terry said, you start the next meeting where you ended this meeting with, okay, let's review the action items and where we are. And I think action officers being action officers and work being work and COVID being COVID, or, people get overwhelmed, other things overtake you. So at the last meeting, you may have committed to X and Y, and you didn't get that done because of other emerging work or operational issues. Again, we have to be able to speak truth to ourselves. And so we have to be able to say, honestly, all right, I know we agreed on that. I haven't been able because of emerging work situations, and you can name them, to get that done, but we are still committed to this action. Yep. It's just going to take us a little bit longer. So again, this kind of accountability, and again, leadership has to recognize that, work is work, and it does take some time to accomplish that. Again, I think leadership has to set expectations for work to be done and has to set deadlines, but also has to work with people on those deadlines when more time is required or more effort is required because of other circumstances.
Yeah, and staying out of judgment and just asking, are you okay? You didn't get it done. I got that. Do you need support? Do you need a resource? Or do you have what you need? It's just work got you. The more you can create safe space, and this is the part that Joe alluded to and Terry alluded to, I'm going to say this to you directly, the more you acknowledge people like I just did with Joe and respond respectfully, the safer the space gets for people to speak their truth to you. So please, as commanding officers, do your best to, as often as possible, acknowledge people and respond respectfully. Terry, something that occurred to you listening to Joe and me blathering there about the acknowledgement piece.
Yeah, I think while you guys were talking, I'm thinking, oh, what an opportunity commands have out there, and they just need to practice this. Look at the acronym, try to understand it, try to practice it, and then see what you learn. And there's great opportunity to then review that with the Jorgen Learning Center when Colleen or Julie are out there with the teams and say, here's what I've done, I've tried this, and get a little coaching on it. But what an opportunity commands have to conduct meetings more effectively.
Yeah, that's great. Right. And we will be here to support you as you move forward. And like this stuff to us feels somewhat second nature. And that's only because we've been doing it for a long time. And we refine it. This C4STEAR came out of Joe. I never thought of that. I thought it was a great way to talk about it. That's not my acronym. That's his. The other things, they unfold as we go. These are living documents and living stories about leading well, not just the right way. Like, we don't ever say this is the way. No, it's a way, and it's a way that we think is useful. Well, let's check out. From your vantage point, what's one thing you'd want a CO to hear from you as we end this particular piece of the meeting? Joe, would you start?
Sure. One thing I would want a CO to know is that, the things that we talk about, again, these are things that have been demonstrated through 30, 40 years of research to work and work effectively. So we call them by the names that we call them, and we communicate them the way that we communicate them to you. And if you want to Google and work on the internet, you can find these concepts. They might be described a little bit differently, but they're out there. And these things work. And so the ability to apply them as a commanding officer, you can make your meetings more effective. You can drive more effectiveness in your organization, in your readiness, and in your mission. And if you don't set the standard that says we're going to have more effective meetings at this command, if you as the commanding officer don't do that, who will?
That's beautiful. And that's just beautiful. There's a piece here, Joe, as you laid that out so beautifully, that Secretary Esper and Secretary Mattis talked regularly about learning organizations. And what Joe just stated, if not you, who? If not now, when? And they use that language all the time. And this C4STEAR is an artifact of a learning organization. And everybody from all the secretaries all want learning organizations. This is an example of an artifact of a learning organization. Joe, that was elegant. Thank you. Terry, you close us out. What resonated most, or what are you thinking right now?
Yeah, I think I'm sort of excited about this. I think for a command from the executive boardroom to other department head meetings and such, there's an opportunity here, really an opportunity to move out and to make meetings more effective. So I would practice the acronym, grab that acronym, and then set a way to go out and practice it at your command level. What an opportunity, exciting opportunity going forward.
Yeah, practice, practice, practice. And as we said in some other situations, the quality of your leadership is revealed in the quality of your conversations. This is how to have one. So well done, everybody. I'm just so impressed with how you guys came around this sense of C4STEAR. And at this point, I'd like to say to everyone listening, thank you. We're very grateful for your attention and for your being part of what it means to be a conversational leader and a learning leader. So this has been Joe Marshall, Terry Moulton, with Ray Jorgensen from the Jorgensen Learning Center, talking about a very simple acronym that will help you steer your meeting forward. And we're so excited that you had a chance to listen to this. We'd love your feedback, and we look forward to opportunities to work with you in the future. This is the JLC Chat Room. Good night, and thank you.
The Jorgensen Learning Center provides leaders with a practical framework to use conversation as a discipline to create a high-performance environment where people are energized to share, contribute, and succeed together. To learn more, visit gojlc.com.